Welcome to The Explainer. Now, when we think about how history gets made, we usually picture big battles or maybe some dramatic laws being passed. But what if one of the most powerful weapons in a fight for an entire kingdom was a poem? Yeah, a poem. Today we're diving into a 300-year-old text that was literally designed to secure the future of the English throne.
I know, it sounds a bit wild, doesn't it? How can a bunch of verses change history? Well, let's get into it because this is an incredible story of art, ambition, and straight-up rebellion.
So back in 1681, a poet named John Dryden decides to jump right into the middle of this chaos. And we're not talking about some thoughtful, quiet piece of literature here. No way. This was basically political ammo fired right in the middle of a huge fight over who would be the next king. Okay, so to really get a handle on how powerful this poem was, we first have to crack its code. See, Dryden hid his real message inside a brilliant disguise, a super famous story from the Bible. On the surface, the story is pretty straightforward. It's about King David, his really popular son Absalom, and this super manipulative advisor, Achitophel. The poem tells the tragic story of Absalom rebelling against his dad, a classic tale of betrayal and family drama. But what if that whole biblical story was just a clever cover, a disguise for a real-world crisis happening right then? Okay, this is where it gets really good. This is the genius of it. Dryden was using this ancient story as a perfect mask for the absolute political chaos that was blowing up all around him. And here it is, the key to the whole thing. Take a look. Dryden maps real-life people from 17th century England directly onto these biblical figures. So the patient King David? That's actually King Charles II. The popular, handsome son, Absalom? That's the Duke of Monmouth, Charles's illegitimate but super popular son. And that evil, manipulative advisor, Achitophel? Well, that's the Earl of Shaftesbury, the king's biggest political enemy. All of a sudden, this isn't a Bible story anymore. It's a political takedown. So that brings up a huge question, right? Why go to all this trouble? Why the secret code? What was going on in England that made a poetic attack like this feel necessary? Well, to put it simply, the kingdom was in crisis. I mean, look at this timeline. Things were getting chaotic. It all kicked off in 1678 with something called the Popish Plot. Now, this was a totally made-up conspiracy, but it created this massive nationwide panic about Catholics, and that fear led directly to the Exclusion Crisis, which was basically an all-out political war to stop the king's Catholic brother from ever inheriting the throne.
See, the king's enemies had a plan. They wanted to completely block his Catholic brother, James, from the line of succession. And who did they want to replace him with? You guessed it. Charles's popular, Protestant, but illegitimate son, the Duke of Monmouth, our Absalom. This was a huge deal, a direct challenge to the entire system of monarchy. And this is where Dryden comes in. As the poet laureate, his job was literally to defend the king and the monarchy. He looked around and saw the country sliding towards another bloody civil war, and he knew he had to do something. So he reached for his weapon of choice, his pen. He was going to use poetry as propaganda to ridicule his enemies and to warn everyone what was at stake. So let's talk about the how. How did he pull this off? I mean, he didn't just tell a story. He built a masterful satirical weapon. And to do that, he needed a very particular literary arsenal. His chosen style was something called verse satire. Now, the whole point of verse satire is to criticize and expose corruption and just plain foolishness, but to do it with wit and ridicule. It's about making powerful people look absolutely absurd, all to make a bigger moral point. And the way he delivered these burns, the heroic couplet. We're talking about these polished, rhyming pairs of lines. And what's so brilliant about them is they give the whole thing this feeling of elegance, but they also have a really sharp sting. It made his insults sound super smart and catchy, which of course made them incredibly memorable and absolutely devastating. So you can see his toolkit here. He's using wit, he's using irony, he's using ridicule. And he combines all of these to paint this picture of Shaftesbury, remember that's Achitophel, not as some noble politician, but as this treacherous, evil villain whispering poison into the ear of this popular young man, all for his own twisted ambitions. So you have to wonder, what was the lasting impact of all this? Did this highly sophisticated poetic attack ad actually work? Did his weapon hit the mark? I mean, look at this strategy. It's like a four-step plan for political warfare. First, you pick a story everyone already knows and respects to give you moral authority. Then, you create that clear allegory, mapping your enemies onto the villains. Step 3, you unleash your satirical tools, the wit, the ridicule. And finally, you shape public opinion. You win the argument by creating a more compelling story. It's basically a masterclass in how to turn art into a political weapon. And let's be clear, this wasn't just a poem for poetry's sake. It was a propaganda weapon, plain and simple. It was designed to ridicule the opposition while making King Charles II look like this wise, patient, merciful ruler. It framed the whole political debate as a fight between divine order on one side and total chaos and ambition on the other.
But here's where the story takes a really tragic turn. The poem ended up being a chilling prediction. Just a few years later, in 1685, the real Absalom, the Duke of Monmouth, he actually did lead a rebellion against the king, and it failed. He was captured and he was executed. Dryden's warning about where all this ambition and manipulation would lead, it became a grim prophecy that came true.
So what's the big takeaway here? Absalom and Achitophel is just incredible proof that a powerful narrative can be way more persuasive than any dry political speech. It's a powerful reminder that art and politics have always been tangled up together. And that kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? When has art shaped politics in our own time? What are the stories, the songs, the movies that are shaping our world right now?